Hello guys, Crudless here, welcome to another episode of Legion, and today we're going to deal with the Darkheart Thicket, the dungeon here in val'sharah. Let's talk to Tyrande here. This shall be remembered as one of the darkest days in the history of our world, but hope remains. Elun's light has strengthened our resolve. We could not save val'sharah, but we did prevent her from destroying the temple. Now I can finally turn my attention to my husband. I do not know what fate he suffers now. I only know that if we stand any chance of saving him, you must go now. Follow Xavius into the nightmare and find Malfurion. Please, save my husband if you can. So as you guys can see, we also have this tear here, the Tear of Elun. The Tear of Elun floats effortlessly glistening in an ethereal pillar of moonlight. And we already got the tear that we can take back to Dalaran to the temple, or to the central chamber that we need to do. But let's queue up to the dungeon Darkheart Thicket. But as you can see, we're going to play as a tank in this episode, or whatever we get as a queue. And you can see that I'm trying to play as a Vengeance Demon Hunter. Notice that I said try, because I'm going to try this for the first time. And because of that, I want to make sure I do this properly. So I'm going to basically cut right now and do this post-commentary. Basically talking over the stuff that I did while concentrating a bit more with the playing in this video, because I don't want to mess up tanking. I mean, it's a serious role. So the reason why I'm playing as a Vengeance Demon Hunter is to show off the abilities right here, and also to try out the spec. I mean, I want to try out tanking with this guy. He seems really cool, and Vengeance really is a cool spec. So the Darkheart Thicket is underneath Shaladrasil, the huge giant tree in val'sharah. In the shadow of Shaladrasil, the nightmare permeates every inch of the once lush forest, where the eldest and greatest druids once tended to the woods, meditating beneath the great world tree. Corruption and madness now reign. Deep within the tangled thicket, the Nightmare Lord Xavius works to break the will of his greatest prize. Talking about Malfurion there, as we'll see. So starting off with the tanking, you can see that I'm trying to keep the focus of the tank is to keep the attention of all the enemies, right? So we gotta go and get some aggro. I usually try to, I've been experiencing some tanking before. I used to tank with a Paladin, and during the Burning Crusade and the Wrath of Lich King. One of the first classes I made back in Vanilla was actually a Warrior. That was my second level 60, I believe, and I used to tank with him, and that was really difficult back then, because I was terrible, of course. I was like 14 years old or something like that, and I was totally new to the game. But my first experiences with the tanking was back in Scholomance, and I kind of want to use this episode as an opportunity to talk about tanking in general and stuff as well. And also talk about the dungeons. As you can see, we're fighting against
those who
these
challenge
druids.
me only speed themselves to an agonizing death.
So says the shadow of Xavius.
Be still, worm. I will deal with you shortly.
We hear some banter between Xavius, or the shade of Xavius, and Malfurion there. Malfurion being significantly more confident now than he was back in the quest we did in the last episode. So we have the Rotting Grotto here. There are some enemies that we need to take care of. With the Demon Hunters, we have the Vengeance Demon Hunter, we have some sigils that we can use. So we have 3 sigils, I believe, currently. We have a sigil of the purple sigil, you can see down there, which is an AoE stun ability. I think I use it right there. It basically just disorients enemies and interrupts spells, or it doesn't interrupt them, but it stuns them for a moment. We also have the Sigil of Silence, which is a silence ability, which is an AoE ability as well. And then you have the Sigil of Flame, which is an AoE ability I use to basically get the attention of everyone around me in a certain area. We also have we don't have the Fell Rush ability anymore, the special charge move that we do with the Demon Hunters. We have changed this to the Leap, which it focuses very similarly, it functions like the Heroic Leap for the Warrior. As you can see here, we managed to pull a lot of stuff, so I have to use a lot of my abilities here to reduce the damage we take. Using the Spikes ability, which basically gives us some armor. As you can see, the spikes growing out of our backs there, making us look terrifying. I love this. Regular ability wise, we are doing this Cleave ability, this regular strike that gives us some of the Fury, which is our resource. And with the Fury, we can cleave the enemies to basically shatter away some of these soul fragments. You can see some of them, these purple orbs, are floating around us sometimes. You can see one shot up there. They give us health and fury back, so it's really nice to get those. That's what the ability of our artifact does as well. The blades we have, you can throw out the blades and they will basically shatter a lot of these skull fragments from the enemies in the area, which is really cool. We also have the same ability as we've been using in Havoc Spec, the blade throw, which hits 3 enemies, I believe, so it can be used to get the attention of some enemies a bit further away to get some aggro. And we also have one of the most important spells for AoE tanking here is the Immolation Aura, which is a really cool throwback to Illidan. I just make sure to notify the group there that it's a job well done. We managed to survive that big pull. So generally, pulling, by the way, if you haven't heard of pulling, that basically means that you draw the attention of enemies that you haven't engaged in battle with yet. So you kind of drag them towards you, you're pulling them towards you, right? And that's one of the main jobs for the tank. What really annoys me is when other groups or other classes tend to pull a lot of enemies, because they will get the aggro, the attention of the enemies, and you'll have to basically drag that attention away from them again, which makes your job harder. So a hunter usually does a lot of the pulling, and they've been doing that since vanilla. They got the ability to misdirect. The rogues has this as well, with the Tricks of the Trade ability, which gives you all the aggro that they are dealing, which makes the pulling a bit easier. But I prefer to do the pulling myself. Now, especially in these large groups, my job here is to keep people alive, and also keep the pace going. I guess there's a fine balance between going fast and going steadily. A lot of people prefer to go fast. I prefer to do this, declare things as good as possible. I mean, I don't want to risk a wipe if we can save like 5 seconds or something like that. I guess that's just me. But we are approaching the first boss in a few moments, and boss tanking is very different than tanking ads. I actually prefer tanking ads, I think. I really enjoy just keeping the attention, having to focus on a lot of enemies around me, make sure everyone is focused and have the aggro of everything. It's kind of like a, I guess you could say it's like, what can you call it? Min-maxing my abilities, as well as micromanaging what is going on around me, which is what I enjoy about tanking. So the first boss of this dungeon is called Archdruid Glaidalis. Glaidalis was once known as among the most talented shapeshifters in all of Azeroth, and the elders of Moonglade would regularly send their most promising disciples to his care for instruction. But as has sadly too often been the case, those who are closest to nature are often the first to fall into the nightmare's clutches.
I can smell the nightmare in your blood. Be gone from these woods, or suffer nature's wrath.
So Glaidalis, I believe he is a master shapeshifter. He can transform either into a bear form or a cat form.
So it is you who have befouled these woods with the nightmare. I sense a powerful by tooth and claw. Be purged!
And this will influence how the fight proceeds to be. So he can either be in the bear form, which means he'll do some charging attacks. He'll have a...
What is that you hold? Be purified in the light of the stars!
Like a primal rampage ability, which will deal a cone damage in front of him, dealing like lots of physical damage, knocking people back. And he'll charge forward, basically, knocking people back as well. In cat form, he will do a grievous leap, which means he will leap to an enemy and inflict damage to them, and then they'll have a tear on them, like a rend of sorts, and he can leap back and forth and deal damage with the tear. He also has a Nightfall ability, which pulls a fragment of nightmare corrupted star from the sky, kind of like a corrupted starfall, one could say.
I just had the strangest nightmare.
A fluke. Savor it and pray you do not face me next.
They will be more than prepared, for your true power rests in the nightmare.
Silence, weakling. When you open your mouth again, it will be to cry for mercy.
I really like the fact that they do have this banter between them. Like, they constantly are fighting between each other, and there's this old rivalry still going on. If you don't know about Xavius and Malfurion, they've been fighting each other since the War of the Ancients. As Malfurion was the first druid blessed by Cenarius, and Xavius was the mage and the advisor to Queen Azshara, and he was blessed to become the first satyr by Sargeras himself, I believe. He gained all these demonic powers, but Malfurion managed to defeat him during the War of the Ancients, and he is now hellbent on revenge. He has already had his revenge, actually, throughout the book known as Storm Rage, which is set during the events of the Wrath of the Lich King. After the Wrath of the Lich King, I believe, somehow at the end there, after we defeated the Lich King, there's this whole war against the Nightmare. But I think they have retconned the story, so I'm not sure if it's still valid. There are some references to the story in the game, but I'm not sure if they are still, I guess maybe they've been retconned. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, Xavius is still bitter, and he was defeated in that book by Malfurion again, so they have this rivalry going on. So as you can see here, all the mobs are usually these plants that are infused with the Nightmare that's been seen before. We also have these dryads and the druids of the tree that have been living here. You can see there are houses and stuff. This probably looked really nice before the corruption took its toll here on the area. And we have to cleanse the area, which is kind of a part of what the druids do. Everyone envisioned like the druids to be this peaceful group of nature-loving hippies, or maybe they refer to night elves as that, but anyway, there are other jobs the druids have to do as well, and the druids don't... Oh, let's see here. The druids are one with nature. That doesn't mean that they don't kill things, because it's in everything's like predatory nature, like wolves and beasts have to kill to survive because they have to eat other beasts, right? And the druids are... they basically adapt to a line of animal that they are tuned to. We have the feral druids, they're blessed by Goldrin, I guess not blessed by Goldrin, but they become cats, and I guess they're blessed by Ashbane, more precisely. And then we have the Worgen druids that used to exist, they are blessed by Goldrin, and we have the druids of the Raven, blessed by Aviana, I believe. They all have these deities that they belong to and get their power from. And that basically infuses, or it affects how they act, the druids. So feral druids are more aggressive, for example, than a guardian druid, which are more slumbering and sleepy. They go into sleep for a long amount of time because they're hibernating, because they're one with a bear, for example. And we have the raven druids that are really a lot more agile and smarter, generally, regarded as a lot more intelligent than the other ones. And these were characters that we used as units back in Warcraft 3. Like you had the druids of the Talon, and you had the druids of the Claw. They were referred to as that back then. And they could transform into these different beasts and stuff, and they had these quotes. If you're curious about more of this stuff, then you should check out the druid class quests that I will have on the channel. And they will be in this playlist in the comments in the description down below, and I think they'll be in the another playlist as well, but not sure about that right now. But anyway, we're here approaching, as you can see, these are creatures of the Nightmare, and they're actually copies of the mist creatures from Pandaria. And we're approaching the area of the second boss, which is a huge giant elder lore tree, an ancient, as they refer to, or as an Ent, inspired by Tolkien. The next boss is called Oakheart, an ancient who formed from the offshoot of Shaladrisil itself. Oakheart has survived the Sundering, the Cataclysm, and countless blights. The ancient was able to weather these storms by drawing strength from the essence of the dream itself. But now that wellspring has become his undoing. Now Oakheart is a jokester, as you can hear in the dialogue.
My bark is worse than my bite. I will crush you to splinters.
He has a couple of abilities. He can do a crushing grip. He can pick you up and crush the tank, basically dealing lots of damage. Now he'll do some strangling roots, which basically captures you in them if you walk across them, and he'll deal physical damage to you if you stand there, if they don't get destroyed. So try to avoid those. And he also shattered the earth around him, shattering like the area in front of him, knocking people back and stuff. He also has a Nightmare Breath, dealing like cone AoE damage in front of him to targets standing there, so I recommend that you stand behind him or far away from Oakheart. So I'm trying to keep his attention to me, because I don't want him to crush everyone around me. As you can see, it's usually a good idea for the ranged damage dealers to stay a bit away from him. Not getting too much dialogue from him today though. That's unfortunate because he does have some puns, some tree jokes, like about his bark, about leaves. There he is picking me up to crush me, as you can see. It's painful.
I told you to leave me alone.
Yeah, get it? Leave.
A pity you have come this far only to die at the hands of Xavius.
An empty threat. You hold no sway over this realm, Nightmare Lord.
Bold words for a prisoner. Even an echo of my power was enough to overwhelm you.
Now, as you can see, we're moving towards these blobs of pure corruption, maybe? They look like blood, to be honest. Maybe it's tar sapping from the tree, something like that. We have these elementals in this area, and you can see there are eggs on each side. The eggs will hatch if you go onto them. You break them, and there will be small dragons coming up, because this is an optional area for the next boss that we'll talk about in a moment. Watch out for those things from the sky, by the way. Those will drop, indicating that they are drops from the tree. And this is like the corruption seeping through that. Oh, almost managed to break those eggs there. But it's kind of a pain in the hours to tank this area because there are lots of ads popping up. The elementals also break into smaller bits once you defeat the large one. And there'll be like 5 or 6 of these, or 4 or 5 more, some of these smaller elementals that you have to pick up as a tank. The Demon Hunter is really good at tanking, by the way. I really enjoyed it. Mostly I'm used to tanking with all the other classes, like I played with the Blood Decay, I played with the Guardian Druid, with the Prot Warrior since Vanilla, and a Prot Pally since the Burning Crusade. So I have experience with tanking with all of those, but I've never mained a tank, to be honest, so it's not generally something I really enjoy it, but I think it's a bit more stressful to me, and I really enjoy hanging back when I play the game, I guess, and having a bit more of a chill time. But Demon Hunter really excels at keeping aggro, and they're really mobile as well, which is super useful. I've noticed just jumping around like a ninja and still trying to keep things a bit more visible for and like concentrate the enemies in certain areas to make things easy for the DPS. You don't have to run around all the time, which is super useful. So here we are approaching the boss room, really small boss room as you can see, and the big dragon over there is the boss. The next boss is called Dressaron. He is an optional boss, you don't have to kill this guy. As you can see, he is a huge dragon, once a young green drake tending to whelps in the shadows of the Great World Tree. Dressaron is now engulfed in nightmare, lost in a fog of hatred and fear. He lashes out with powerful wings and withering breath, unleashing his rage on any who stumble into his clutches. So Dressaron is kind of a fun fight. You can see the area around him is surrounded by these eggs. And he'll do like this wind blast attack, the downdraft, I guess it's called, which will knock you backwards when he's flapping his wings and you get pushed into those eggs. And if you break them, some ads will come out and you have to deal with the ads. So try to run towards the boss and you'll stay alive for longer. He also has a breath of corruption in front of him, so I'm trying to move him around, as you can see. Kind of avoid those breaths of corruption and kind of forcing the boss to not shoot at the entire party, which is a good idea. He also has like his earth-shaking roar, which creates like this, I guess you can call it a rock slide from the sky or something like that, which creates an earthquake of sorts in the area. So I tried to move him away from that thing. It's taking up a lot of space in this small room. But still, we managed to take him down, and we did get some bonus experience for taking him on. As you can see to the right on the screen, you can see there are some checkpoints next to the boss names there, and if you beat all those you get some bonus experience at the end. So it's usually a good idea to take all the bosses here for getting loot and also for getting some bonus experience for leveling up. This dungeon, by the way, scales from level 100 to 110, so it's one of the earliest dungeons you can go into. You can still do it at 110. It's usually a lot of people visit this because you have to do it to finish all the zones. So the queues for the 4 dungeons we've done so far in the playthrough have all been fairly short, the queues for them, and they've all been mandatory to do them. Well, they're not mandatory, but they're usually a really nice way to get experience. And this is the final path up to the final boss. You can see there are tons of ads here, each group like incrementally increasing the number of ads. some imps you have to silence, which gives us some usage for the Sigil of Silence, even though I messed it up a few times. Demon Hunters also do have the mana burn ability. I guess that's interrupt, which gives me damage boosts if I interrupt a spell, which is super nice. And as you can see, this is the second to last one. It has some bats. In the last episode, we flew on top of one of those bats, dot bombs in the area, which was kind of cool. And here we see them fighting against us, which means we basically have to take them down. And the final boss of this area is, not surprisingly, the Shade of Xavius. And he's a really cool entity, but not a difficult boss, as we'll go into eventually. But I think you guys will enjoy the fight against him regardless. The last pack of mobs here, by the way, required me to pop a lot of the cooldowns just to make sure I stayed alive and didn't take too much damage. So I'm gonna pop the leap and the sigil, and then we're gonna go. Now the final boss of this dungeon is Shade of Xavius. Once a powerful mage and counselor to Queen Azshara, Xavius forged a pact with Sargeras to enable the Legion's first invasion of Azeroth. Cursed and tormented in the wake of that defeat, Xavius now projects his true power from the nightmare into our world, focusing his dark might to break the spirits of his old rival Malfurion. So let's see if he is able to break the spirit of Malfurion. Xavius is not a difficult boss, to be honest. Or the Shade of Xavius, mind you. This is not the real Xavius. Xavius is a boss in the other dungeon that we'll see eventually in the Nightmare. This is the Shade, so he's significantly weaker. He has a Festering Grip, rends the target, leaving like a wound effect, which reduces healing. He has a Feed on the Weak, consumes an enemy's soul, inflicting lots of shadow damage on them. Over time, he has a Nightmare Bolt, it's a spell you can interrupt that with your interrupts to avoid taking lots of shadow damage. He has Induced Paranoia, which is kind of the thing that happens, which is interesting about this fight, is that he will basically make someone paranoid. If you stand next to someone else, the paranoia will spread and it'll deal damage to everyone standing next to you, and you'll be feared as well. So you gotta stay away from allies if you have the Induced Paranoia debuff. And lastly, he has the Apocalyptic Nightmare spell, which is this thing you see at the end, where lots of things are falling from the sky. As you can see, the tree around us is burning now, it's on fire by his magic.
Your feeble mind.
And he is also very focusing on this whole theme of mind control and the corruption, which is also influenced by the old gods, as we'll see when we go into the Emerald Nightmare. There are tons of these influences by Yogg-Saron and now Emzoth as well. And Xavius is also very angry, so you can see this is kind of his culmination. He's bringing the madness into this anger.
I refuse to accept.
Well-earned victory. We must, however, stay vigilant. Deep inside the nightmare, Xavius remains unvanquished. The enemy you fought here was merely his shadow.
I heed the voice of Elune.
Praise Elune in all that her light touches. Malfurion is alive. I thought I would spend the rest of my days alone, dreaming of the choices I did not make. Thank you. Thank you for turning my love to me. We get a nice reward here, the Threads of the Receding Nightmare. Now we're going to head back to Dalaran here, into the Chamber of the Guardian. And as you can see, we have the tier here, being the last pillar of creation that we need. We have the Aegis, we have the Hammer of Khaz'goroth, and here we're gonna put the Tear of Elune. Archmage Khadgar has set aside a space here for the Tears of Elune, as well as the rest of the pillars of creation. We get a tunic called the Shaladrisil Tunic, level 800.
Today we celebrate a great triumph, one paid for with the blood of those most dear to us. Thanks to your courage, the ancient lands of val'sharah can at long last begin to heal. Now the Tears of Elune are added to our arsenal. May they bring us victory against the Legion.
So that's it for this episode of Let's Play World of Warcraft Legion. I hope you enjoyed this episode with a kind of a twist with a post-commentary here, with a Vengeance Demon Hunter tanking. Hopefully you'll find it enjoyable. Please click the like button down below if you did enjoy it. and I'll see you next time.